might be a Conservative stronghold, but the Liberals are making gains in parts of this province, and they're fighting hard to build on those. The Tories are starting to take notice, and that is setting the stage for an interesting electoral battle of Alberta here in Edmonton and beyond. Joining us is Tom Vernon. He's a senior consultant with Crestview Strategy. Thank you for coming out in the middle of the night. We certainly appreciate it here on your morning.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Listen, right now the Liberals only hold 2 seats in the province of Alberta. One of them is here in Edmonton Centre, and it's a riding that for decades has been really hotly contested. How is the race shaping up right now, and what's contributing to this tight race?
Yeah, it's an interesting riding. This is the one that Anne McClellan used to win back in the late 90s, early 2000s by, handfuls of votes, and it tends to go back and forth between the Liberals and Conservatives. The Liberals held it last time. It was Randy Boissonneau who's not running this time. There's some issues around there, and he's decided not to run. So there's a new candidate in there. She was actually moved from a different constituency here in Edmonton into that one. Now, polls are showing that she's, polling well there, but it's always a tight race in that one. And there's a competitive NDP candidate as well in Trish Esterbrook's, a well-known local candidate here. She was in the school board. So that's an interesting one. It's one that the Liberals will want to hold on to, and I think likely will hold on to. But that's one of those races where you look at the election and think, okay, if there's going to be some seats in Alberta, that's one for the Liberals. Okay,
we've put up this map here. This is Edmonton Centre, but you can see the red lines around. So after this last federal election, the ridings were redrawn. This is across the board, but here's how it plays out here in Alberta. You're getting 3 new ridings, so going from 34 to 37. Calgary is getting most of those. But in Edmonton, the lines were redrawn, and they've established a firm boundary between urban and rural voters. So how will that benefit the Liberal or the NDP potentially?
Yeah, and I'm actually living in one of those ridings in the south side of Edmonton. So the last few elections, when I was voting for a candidate. It's Mike Lake from the Conservatives. That was, had city boundary as well as rural boundary. It's now that, you're right, it's now an urban riding. So I have a new riding, and it's actually, it's more competitive now. There's another one just to the next to me. It's another competitive one for the Liberals. That's where Amarjeet Sohi is running, former federal cabinet minister and current mayor of Edmonton. So
he's on unpaid leave, if I understand correctly, to run in this.
Yeah, so he's running, and he won in 2015 during that sweep when Justin Trudeau became prime minister, and he's back and looking pretty competitive in that riding as well. So what this redrawn boundaries will do, it is making it more competitive for the Liberals here. In the city, in Edmonton, provincially, there's not a single Conservative MLA here. It's entirely NDP, so there's more progressive voters here. There is that real urban-rural divide when it comes to that vote, when it comes to right and left. So putting these boundaries entirely in the city, I think that is helpful for the Liberals, for sure.
We'll have to wait and see. One of the things that's unusual also about this campaign is we're hearing very similar messaging from both the Liberals and the Conservatives. Very similar pledges. They've both pitched variations on energy pipelines and the importance of those. They've both ruled against the carbon tax, and they've both promised cuts for the middle class. So they sound like they're ready to give Albertans what they're asking for. But let me ask you this. Is this default to the Conservatives so deeply entrenched that it doesn't matter what the Liberals promise, even if it sounds the same as the Conservatives?
Yeah, and I think part of that is, look, the mood of the country around the Trump tariffs and this and that, but it's also to take some issues off the table when it comes to this federal election. For years now, we knew this federal election, or thought this federal election, was going to be fought on the carbon tax. Well, it's not being fought on the carbon tax now because Liberals went, it's gone. We're not going to have that anymore. So that was, one of Pierre Poilievre's main lines. And he's still talking about, axe the tax. And still talking about it when it comes to the industrial carbon tax. That's a lot harder to explain to folks than a consumer one, because you don't really see that one at the gas pump so clearly. So what that's done is it's taken those issues off the table and made it more about who's best to lead the country in the time of Trump tariffs and the relationship with the United States. Now, I'm not sure how huge of a difference it's going to make in Alberta as far as what are the issues at play here. I think more of it is around those boundaries, and then having that conversation around that leadership back and forth. But yeah, it was really interesting, that strategy, because we're not talking about the carbon tax. We're not talking about that.
Right. Well, let's talk about something everybody's talking about. So just behind us is the office, is the legislature, or the Ledge, the provincial House of Government here in Alberta. There's also the office of Premier Danielle Smith. She was viewed as an outlier by some in her views and her treatment in her response to U.S. tariffs, but she's also the one who seems to be getting the closest access to the Oval Office and to President Trump. So while some people have gone as far as to label her a traitor, how is she being viewed by Albertans and her stance on protecting Alberta?
Yeah, and look, so she's taken that different tact and talking about, look, don't put export tariffs on our energy here. Let's have these conversations and that. And some of that is kind of pushback against Ottawa. There are 3 things that are certain in life when it comes to Alberta: death taxes and a Conservative government fighting back against the Liberal government in Ottawa. So a lot of this is about how could she break with what the federal Liberal government is doing and show that she is standing up for Albertan interests. Like, she was very aware of who she's standing here elected to represent, and she thinks it's Alberta interests. And the base that she is speaking to is very much anti-liberal, anti-federal government on that front. So she's really talking to those audiences when it comes to what she's doing here and standing up for Albertan interests on that front. So how is she being viewed here? Look, there's some frustration from some people here in Alberta about how it's going, but she's getting a lot of credit from the base of her party and the people that elected her as leader of the UCP and ultimately elected her as Premier of Alberta.
Tom, just before I let you go back to your office or back to bed, whichever one you prefer to do first, can I ask you really quickly what you are looking for in this election? What are you keeping your eyes on?
Just how, honestly, it's how the races break out east, and that's usually how it goes as viewers from Alberta in the federal election. And then to see if it is a Liberal majority, what we've been talking about here. What kind of representation will there be from Alberta? What kind of voice at the table will there be if there is a Liberal government here from Alberta? It looks like, there's a couple safe seats for them. Can they break through and get some more? And then just these last couple of weeks, look, the 2015 election, it turned in the last couple of weeks as well. So I know the polls show, and the pollsters show that it's looking like a Liberal majority. Look, election day matters, and look, Conservatives are going to have a very motivated base to get out and vote.
All right, Tom Vernon, we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thanks
Thank you so much. If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.